My name is Agnes Steve, and I want to tell you about something incredible that happened to me. I'm 64 years old and live in a quiet little town in Ohio. For 4 decades, I worked as a nurse at the county hospital until I retired. These days, I keep myself busy with simple pleasures, tending to my small vegetable garden where tomatoes and cucumbers grow, and spending precious time with my daughter Jessica, who lives just 10 minutes down the road. Her 2 children, Leo and Grace, bring more joy to my heart than I could ever put into words. On the morning of September 11th, 2025, I died on my kitchen floor while the news played softly in the next room. I'm someone who likes doing the same things every day. I drink coffee each morning, watch the birds eating from my bird feeder, work on word puzzles, and pray while I clean dishes after dinner. I never wanted a crazy, busy life. I was happy living quietly in my little part of the world. But I've always worried a lot. When you're a nurse, you see people hurting all the time. And when you're a grandma, you worry about what kind of world your grandchildren will grow up in. The night before I died, I couldn't fall asleep. The news was on TV all day and all night. They kept talking about how someone had killed a young man in politics named Charlie Kirk. It made me so sad. It wasn't because I cared about his politics. For me, it was all the hate I saw. I watched it on the screen. The news people and everyone they talked to were so mad, so full of anger at people who thought differently than them. I sat in my old chair, the one with the worn-out armrests, and I just started crying. I cried for his family. I cried for the person who hurt him, and I cried for our whole country. It felt like we were ripping ourselves apart, bit by bit. I prayed for hours, asking God to bring some peace to everyone. I finally fell asleep in my chair around 2 in the morning. The next day, I woke up feeling awful. The house was quiet, but that scared feeling from the night before was still there, sitting heavy on my chest. I went to the kitchen to make coffee. I remember how the old coffee grounds smelled in the can. I reached for a cup, one that my grandson Leo had painted for me with blue and green colors all over it. Then it happened. It wasn't like what you see in movies. I didn't fall down in a big dramatic way. Instead, I felt a sharp, biting pain right in the middle of my chest, like someone was sticking a hot metal stick into me. Took all my breath away. I couldn't even make any noise. My hand went to my chest and the cup fell from my other hand. It broke into pieces all over the kitchen floor. I remember seeing all the blue and green pieces spread everywhere. Then I was falling down. Everything around me tilted sideways. The last thing I saw was the ceiling light that looked like a blurry, faraway star. The last thing I heard was my heart beating one last crazy time. And then nothing. But that wasn't the end. All of a sudden, I wasn't lying on the floor anymore. I was floating up near the ceiling. I looked down and saw myself. My body was lying there in my old bathrobe, with broken pieces of the cup all around me. It was the weirdest thing ever. I didn't feel any pain or fear, just like I was watching something that didn't really involve me. I saw my gray hair spread out on the floor. I saw all the worry lines on my face. My first thought was, oh no, Jessica is going to be so upset when she sees this mess. That's what a mom thinks about, I guess. From the living room, I could still hear the TV. The voices sounded far away and muffled, like they were coming from underwater. They were still talking about the man who got killed, still arguing and blaming people. All that anger was still flowing like a river, even while I was floating there, not knowing where I was. Then I felt something pulling me. It wasn't rough or scary. It was gentle, like being carried by slow-moving water. The kitchen started to disappear. The sound of the TV and the sight of my body on the floor started getting smaller and smaller, like I was looking at them through the wrong end of binoculars. I was moving through a tunnel. It wasn't dark or scary. It was made of soft, swirling light that looked like clouds when the sun is coming up. All the angry voices from the world disappeared completely. And for the first time in what felt like forever, there was only quiet, a deep, perfect, and holy quiet. It was the most peaceful feeling I have ever felt in my life. All the worry I'd carried my whole life as a nurse, a mom, and a grandma just lifted off of me, like taking off a heavy winter coat that I'd finally been allowed to put down. I didn't know where I was going, but for the first time ever, I wasn't scared. At the end of this beautiful, quiet trip, the light opened up. It wasn't a place you could describe with normal words like room or field. It was just being there, existing in a place of pure life. And he was there. I knew right away it was Jesus. Now, I need to be really clear about this. He didn't look like any painting I'd ever seen in church. There was no stained glass window or golden circle around his head. It's hard to even say what he looked like. He was made of a light that didn't hurt your eyes to look at. It was light that felt like truth, like coming home. But the first thing I felt from him wasn't happiness. It wasn't a big, loud welcome. It was sadness, a deep, heavy sadness that seemed to come from the very center of who he was. Came off him like heat from a fire. It was a sadness so pure and deep, it made the sadness I'd felt the night before seem like a tiny puddle compared to an ocean. It was like a father's sadness when he watches his children hurt each other. And I felt it in every part of my soul. The air around him was still and heavy with this special kind of sadness. It felt like the whole universe had stopped to hold its breath. He didn't talk with a voice you could hear with your ears. His thoughts just appeared inside my head. They were clearer than spoken words, softer than a whisper. And the first thing he said to me in my mind was, "Margaret, you understand." I didn't know what to say back. I just stood there in his presence, feeling this amazing mix of peace from where I was and this deep sadness coming from him. Tears filled my eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness or happiness. They were tears of finally getting it. I was crying because I was sharing his broken heart. Then he showed me something. The light around us changed. It was like we were standing on a balcony looking down at the world. But I wasn't seeing places. I was seeing people's hearts. First, he showed me a family eating dinner together. It looked like so many families I'd known in my life, a mom, a dad, a son who was in college, and a teenage daughter. But there was no peace at that table. The father's face was red with anger. The son was yelling back at him, his hands made into tight fists. The mom was just staring down at her plate, her heart breaking as her husband and son threw awful words at each other like rocks. They were fighting about politics, about what was right and wrong. But they weren't really talking about ideas anymore. They were attacking each other as people. Jesus' thoughts came into my mind again, full of pain. The enemy doesn't need to break down the door when families invite him to sit at their dinner table. I saw the hatred. It wasn't just being mad. It was like a living thing, a dark, ugly rope connecting them all together, pulling them apart from each other. Then what I was seeing changed. He showed me a church. It was a beautiful old building with tall windows, but inside it was being ripped in half. People who had gone to church together for years and years, who had baptized each other's babies and been at each other's funerals, were standing on opposite sides of the room, glaring at each other. Their prayers had turned into weapons. "They use my name," Jesus said to me, "but they don't carry my heart in theirs. They chose their country's flag over my cross." I saw a line being drawn right down the middle of the church, and it wasn't drawn with chalk. It was a crack, a deep split in the ground, and it was getting wider and wider. Then he showed me a city. I couldn't tell which one it was. Could have been any city in America. I saw people walking down the streets with their heads down, their eyes full of suspicion and fear. Neighbors were looking at neighbors, not with kindness, but with worry. "What side are you on? Who did you vote for?" The questions weren't spoken out loud, but they were screaming in the air between people. And then I saw them all around the people, hiding in the shadows of buildings, sitting at dinner tables in the seats of the church were these things. They weren't monsters with horns and pitchforks like in scary movies. They were like dark smudges, like the wavy heat you see coming off hot pavement in summer, but cold instead of hot. They were evil spirits, and they were eating. They stuck to the angry people, whispering in their ears, making their anger hotter and their suspicion deeper. They grew fat and strong by feeding on all the division between people. I watched as one of these shadows whispered to a man reading his phone, and I saw the man's face twist up with rage. He typed something full of poison and hate, and the shadow seemed to smile as it drank in all the hate he was putting out into the world. It was terrifying. I started to cry harder. "What is this, Lord? What is all this?" His presence wrapped around me like a warm blanket. His sadness was still there, but now there was a powerful love mixed in with it. This is the real war, he told me in my mind. Your country's soul is sick. The killing that broke your heart, Margaret, didn't cause this sickness. It was just a sign of it, like a fever that shows up on the skin when the whole body is already poisoned. He kept going, and his words burned themselves into my soul. The real danger isn't the bullet, but all the hatred it wakes up. America is standing next to a river of blood, a river that gets fed by angry words, bitter hearts, and families turning against their own people. And only love can change it back into clean, living water. I saw it then. I saw how every hateful comment people wrote online, every family fight, every church that split in half was another drop of poison going into that river. We were all feeding it every single day without even knowing it. My children are dying, he said, and his sadness washed over me again. They are so busy fighting for their earthly kingdoms that they have forgotten about my heavenly one. They ask me for victory when they should be asking for mercy. They want justice when they should be giving forgiveness. I stood there just taking it all in. I had spent my whole life as a nurse trying to heal people's bodies. And here Jesus was showing me the sickness in our souls, in our hearts. What can we do? I asked, my own spirit crying out. It's too much. It's too big. It starts small, he answered gently. It starts in here. And I felt his presence touch my heart. It starts with one person choosing to be merciful instead of being right. It starts with one prayer for an enemy, a real prayer from the heart. It starts with one family turning off the news and looking into each other's eyes again. Every small act of quiet love, every moment of forgiveness is a drop of clean, living water in that poisoned river. It may seem tiny, but it's the only thing that can heal the land. I felt such deep peace being with him. All the chaos and craziness of the world was gone. All the fear and all the anger, none of it was there. There was only this perfect, sad, powerful love. I never wanted to leave that place. I felt like a tired person who had finally come home after a long, hard trip. Please, I begged him, please let me stay here with you. I'm so tired. The world is too broken. I don't want to go back. I felt like a little kid asking her dad for something really important. He looked at me, and for the first time I felt the sadness pull back and a gentle, loving smile take its place. It was a smile that seemed to hold all the stars in the sky. My dear child, he said, and the thought was filled with so much tenderness it made my soul hurt in a good way. Your work isn't finished yet. Your death wasn't an accident. I brought you here to show you all this so you can go back and tell people what you saw. You have to tell them what you witnessed. You have to tell them that I am crying for what they are doing to each other. Tell them the war they are fighting isn't against other people, but against the darkness that feeds on their division. He paused, and his next words felt like he was giving me a mission. Go back and tell them to love. That's all. Just love. It's the only weapon that will win this war. I didn't want to go back. The thought of leaving him, of leaving this place, was the most painful thing I have ever felt. It was a heartbreak that had no words to describe it. I cried and begged him to let me stay, but I knew I had to go back. I am with you, was the last thing he said to me. Always. And then I felt that pulling feeling again. But this time it was pulling me back, away from the light, away from him. The beautiful silence was broken by a rushing sound, and I felt myself falling faster and faster, back into darkness, back toward all the noise. The first thing I felt was pain, a crushing, burning pain in my chest like an elephant was sitting on top of me. The first thing I heard was someone screaming. It was my daughter Jessica. She's breathing. Oh my God, Mom, you're breathing. I took a huge, rough breath that felt like swallowing fire and broken glass. My eyes flew open. The light was blinding. Not the gentle light of heaven, but the harsh, bright light of a hospital room. There were faces all around me, people in medical clothes, and they looked shocked and like they couldn't believe what they were seeing. A machine next to me was beeping like crazy. I tried to talk, but only a rough, scratchy sound came out. Jessica was holding my hand, and her face was soaked with tears. Mom, can you hear me? Oh, Mom, we lost you. The doctors said you were gone. Everything was so confusing. The peace was gone. The sad but loving presence of Jesus was gone. All that was left was pain, noise, and the smell of hospital cleaning supplies. I just closed my eyes and cried. I wasn't crying because I was alive again. I was crying because I had just left my real home. I had just left him. Later, a doctor came into my room. He was a young man with kind eyes, but he looked completely confused and puzzled. He sat on the edge of my bed and looked at my medical chart. "Mrs. Ellis," he said, shaking his head slowly, "your daughter found you when your heart had completely stopped. The paramedics worked on you for over 20 minutes. Here at the hospital, we kept trying for another 10 minutes. You were clinically dead for a very long time. You shouldn't be here at all. And even if you survived, you should have significant brain damage from being without oxygen. But there isn't any. We can't explain it." I just looked at him and nodded. "I can," I whispered. "I'm not a politician. I'm not a preacher. I'm just a grandmother from Ohio who died on her kitchen floor. But I was sent back with a message, and I promised him I would share it. He asked me to tell you that heaven is real and it is watching us with a broken heart. The fighting in our country, the anger we feel toward people we've never even met, it's not a political problem. It's a spiritual poison, and it's feeding a darkness that wants to destroy us all from the inside out. Jesus didn't ask me what political party I belonged to. He didn't care about that at all. All he cared about was the condition of my heart and the condition of all our hearts. He wants us to stop fighting each other. He wants us to turn off the screens that feed us anger and rage, and instead look into the eyes of our family, our neighbors, and the people we disagree with and see a child of God in them. He said the only thing that can heal us is love. The kind of love that forgives people. The kind of love that listens instead of yells. The kind of love that builds a bridge instead of a wall. So I'm asking you, not as someone who knows anything special, but as someone who was given a second chance. The next time you feel that spark of anger toward the other side, whoever that is for you, please stop, take a deep breath, and say a prayer for them instead. Drop one clean drop of living water into that poisoned river, because heaven is real. Jesus is real and he hears you. And right now, his heart is breaking.